Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Midwest Mobility Webinar Series, also known as M3 Webinar or MQ. So just so you know, this is our last webinar in this series, and we are so happy for the great turnout we had every month and a great interest from many people to learn new things that are happening in and around Kansas. So thank you all. So if you have missed any of the previous webinars, do not worry, we have recorded them and are available on our YouTube channel. I'm gonna post the link for the playlist that we have the videos in. So do check it out. And before I introduce our speaker today, some general webinar expectations for you all, as you already know. Just a formality. Please post your name and agency in the chat box to know if your friends are here. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please post them in the chat box and we will have a Q&A session at the end. And for some reason, if you have any technical difficulties, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm gonna post my email address in the box in a moment. And finally, let me introduce our speaker today, Dr. Omar Mali. Dr. Mali has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, a master's and a PhD degree from KU in civil engineering, where he specialized in construction engineering and management. He is a certified project management professional by PMI. Dr. Mali has 5 years of international construction experience as an assistant project manager for one of the top 20 international general contractors. In addition, Dr. Mali brings 4 years of experience assisting organizations in implementing innovations in procurement, technology, and project delivery methods, including IPD, CMAR, and PPP. And congratulations to him for getting a new job with the City of Lawrence. And so let's welcome Dr. Mali to our M3 webinar. Floor is yours, Omar.
Yeah, thank you. This is a really nice introduction. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, all. I'm glad I'm presenting today. Actually, this is a really interesting topic for me. It's been like we've been working on it for 3 years, so I'm really enthusiastic about it, and I understand the importance of it, and that's what I'm hoping to do today and share it with you guys. So let me start with the slides here. Let me know if. All right. Can you see? Can I give a thumbs up or something if you could see the slides?
It's
all right.
Just
so, and if you could maybe help me track those comments. I'll stop at the end for any questions, and I'll have a lot of I'll have my email, everything listed if you have any questions or further discussions you want to talk about. So the topic is basically about management strategies that we need to be aware of while we are implementing innovations. So over the series, you've been introduced to new changes in the transportation industry, a lot of new innovation changes, you call it, and I'm sure everyone here has at least experienced some type of those changes in their organizations. I'm gonna move, let me make sure I am, yep. I'm gonna introduce myself a little bit. You already did that. So again, my name is Omar Mali. I have a bachelor and master degree in civil engineering, and I'm gonna join the City of Lawrence. This is the new job. I've been working as a research and a consultant, working on as the owner representative with the Simpler Foundation. And we have been helping over those years, helping organizations to adapt and implement new changes and innovation. I'm gonna tell you a couple of, I don't like to call them secrets, but actually practices that you should be aware of if you're encountering any change. Either you're on the leadership or senior leadership side, or you're on the project level, or even in the doer side. So the agenda for today is we're gonna talk about a little bit the innovation. What does that mean, and what is the term of organizational change? Then I'm gonna give you some statistics how organizations are implementing those changes as innovations. Then we're gonna talk about what are the practices, what are we recommending you to do in order to successfully do your changes or implement those changes or innovations within your organization and grasp all the benefits out of it. Then if we have time, I'm gonna give you a quick real world example that we've been encountering and just highlight a couple of those practices that have been used and how to use it in any example or any change you're gonna encounter. So basically, change, like you've been hearing me saying change and innovation. So they are kind of the same term in our minds and within this area. Change is something that happens that change the processes within your organization, and it could be new innovation. So innovation, when you hear an innovation, you think about technology. That's not all true, but there's a lot of new methods, management processes that is happening, and we call them innovation if they are new and actually innovative. Let's put it that way. So change and innovation, you're gonna hear me say it interchangeably here, but we are talking about what is happening, like a new softwares, new technology, new management softwares, new management approaches, even business structure that are introduced to organization or in the business world. And everybody at least encountered a type of change within their organization. So change basically is, you cannot avoid it, basically. It's gonna happen, right? And it's all the other industry are changing rapidly and the change is happening fast. And we could see that over the last 10 years, the technological changes and digital transformation, you are seeing it a lot and you are seeing it more. And actually it's getting into our industry, the construction industry or the AEC industry. And the reason behind that, why those changes are implemented, because we are evolving, right? Technologies are getting better. It's getting a little bit cheaper, so it's more accessible, and there's a lot of benefits. And the industry, our industry, the architecture and engineering construction industry, been accused of lacking in terms of productivity, and some of the researchers are accusing that because our industry are not changing or adapting any new innovations. They are kind of slacking behind. So that's why the productivity and are declining over the past 50 years. Now, change, you could say like, yeah, let's do change, or why we need to change at the beginning. We understand there's a lot of benefits to change, but there's a lot of risk and a lot of investment that comes to any type of change you want to do within your organization. But in order to keep up with what's happening around the world and keep the competitive edge, because each change brings new opportunities, new enhancement. Other organization, if they already applied that change and you are not, that puts you in a different position. So you lose the competitive edge within the industry by not adapting. I'm not saying every single change, but not keeping up with the changes that actually benefits your processes, give you better outcomes at the end. But we all know, if you even think of a change, a personal change you've been trying to do, it's really hard. It's not that easy. It's not say like, let's change. I'm gonna be a morning person. That's not an easy change. But when you think about change, it's actually a process, and it's not an event. You cannot say, let's change. It's not a click of button and that's done, right? It's a process. And within our industry, we understand the processes. We are good in projects. Let's say, think about a construction project or an engineering project. We plan it well in order to succeed at the end and deliver the product. We looked at it at the beginning and tried to evaluate risk, sequencing, and everything, right? So in order to succeed and change, it's no difference. That's what we're trying to say here. That's what everyone needs to know within our industry and different industry, that it's a process. It needs to be managed in a way similar to what we are managing, how we are managing construction projects. Now, a lot of research, and because it's a process, identified that the need of a well-planned process. You don't need only a process or a plan. You need to have a well-planned process in order to grasp all the benefits and successfully implement any of those new changes or innovations. Now, let me introduce you to this term. If some of you might have heard of this term before, but this is this is the term that represents what we're going to talk about is organizational change management. You could hear different names to it, like transformational change management, organizational change practices, but it basically not to be confused with change orders and or change management in terms of change orders in the project. This is organizational change management, how to manage an organizational change that is happening with your organization. And again, as I said, change might be new innovation, technology, anything that is different. And within its definition, it's basically what are the management is doing, what are the management steps you are taking in order to implement a new processes that either it's a new process to replace old process or to add on a new process for an ultimate goal, which is to benefit the whole organization. And that's why we call it organizational change management. Now it's important. This management, as I told you, since we are already acknowledging that change is hard and needs a well-planned process. So we need a way to manage this change, not just saying, let's adapt this change, let's do this new software and use it. You need to take it and understand it if it's like a project and work with it. So in order to grasp all the benefits, you need to successfully adopt that change. Think about any type of software. You have watched like a demo for it or a tutorial, right? They promise you with all type of benefits. Some of them are proven, and even like other organizations will tell you what is the benefits of those softwares, for example. But some organizations, they put all the investment, all the money, all the training, and after 1 year or even at the end of the adoption, they fail. They don't grasp all those benefits. Out of 10 benefits, they only get 1 or 0 or 2 or 3. That's not a full successful adoption. So you need, in order to grasp and get all the ROIs on your investment and this change and grasp all the benefits, you need to successfully implement and adopt that change. And the importance to it, just to highlight more why the management aspect, why changes need to be treated in a management way to manage it like a project. It was added in the PMP, the project management professional certificate, of how project managers or professional project managers should support their organization while they're trying to change and adapt to new processes. Now, this understanding is, I think, is kind of broadly with researchers and organizations. They understand that change is hard and need to have a plan, and they need to have steps, and they need to manage it. And there's a lot of practices that have been recommended and are being recommended by researchers and organizations and agencies on how to implement change. But the problem, there's so many of those practices. And it was observed by case studies from different researchers and organizations that some organization within our industry, they are adapting the same change, for example, BIM, let's say. And the differences of the outcome are what are they benefiting of that change is only the practices, what is the management steps they use, that's what differentiate the outcome or how they successfully adapted compared to each other. So we're seeing differences because there's a lot of practices, you're using a lot of solutions, let's say, and there's no a set of one solution that fits kind of all. Some statistics like how there's a lot of, I don't like to share those statistics a lot because they're kind of scary in a way for anyone who's any organization trying to go through change, but they are out there. So basically, to be conservative, they say mostly more than half of change initiatives fail. Like if there's we're not talking about like inventing a new innovation. No, you already have that change, that innovation is ready, proven, and you're trying to implement it in your organization, but you're failing. Why? Because of the practices. You're not doing a well job in implementing and managing that change. And even with digital transformation, we are seeing, and other researchers, and this is coming from McKinsey and company, they did a lot of research and case studies, and they found it's even harder to implement digital transformation. And basically that's what this era is about, right? We are seeing a lot of technologies, a lot of innovations, digital transformation, but they're saying it's more difficult to pull off. Those numbers are scary, showing the importance of finding kind of a solution to lower those numbers and increase the success rate. Now, the goal we had within our research is to identify, because there's a lot of practice, we want to identify organizational change management practices. We need to identify a set, a simple set. It's not a big list that any organization could use. They could learn, they could develop, they could practice, and like being better while they're practicing it. And it could fit you and help you in adapt any change with our industry. And we're talking about the AEC industry, so we're talking about architecture, engineering, and construction. So basically, when we did our review, looking in the organizational change area in different industries, in our industry, what are the barriers, how to overcome those barriers, and trying to find what is the most important practices, or what we called here as vital organizational change management practices, we found 6 practices. So those are the kind of most important practices or most prominent practices that will help you overcome challenges and obstacles while you're trying to adapt any change and help you achieve successful outcomes, because you want to avoid failure and achieve all the benefits you are looking for. If there's 10 benefits you are looking to get out of that change, you need to, the best thing is to have all of them happening to your organization. So basically those 6 practices, they are senior leadership commitment, availability of training resources, communicating the benefits of that change, then have a realistic time frame to implement the change, then change agents effectiveness, then lastly but not least, measured benchmarks. Again, I explained those, have some definitions to it, just so you could understand what each one represents. So senior leadership commitment basically is senior leadership need to be involved, because normally they have the vision of that change. They understand the vision and the benefits of that change, but they need to apply it, right? They need to be committed, not only in that's where we see the problems happen, only the first portion, the early involvement of the senior leadership, then they drop off, right? They drop the ball, and that's show less important or enthusiast from the senior leadership management. That's where employers start to be more resistive and they encounter that change. So we are, and the couple of underlines here, not micromanaging, we're saying just commitment and involvement and showing interest of this topic from the day it starts until the end, and actually walk the talk. That's basically what it is. Training resources, you need to have the available training resources. And I'm using the software example because it's easier to understand. There's a lot of softwares that comes with training, right? It does not mean like you just need to get those training. You want to make sure those trainings are effective. And we dive deep on what type of pedagogies that need to be used with those training resources. And basically just to say them, you need to have more on-job interaction type of a training. So if there's a software videos, tutorials, yep, that's good. But let's try to find also an on the job or on the site one-on-one training to solve those problems, because you're going to encounter some questions and problems with the software, let's say, or the new change. So not only availability of training resources, but the availability of effective training resources. The third one is communicating the benefits. This has 2 levels to it. You need to clearly explain what is the personal benefits for that employee, because they are changing their processes. If they are doing those steps, now it's going to be changed because you're doing other processes. If there is a beneficial impacts to them personally within their job role, make it easier for them. I think that's kind of, sometimes it's easier to explain, but the harder is to explain if they have a new process to it, maybe an adds-on process, and they don't understand why they're doing it. Does that benefit just an extra work or more work to do, or even a harder work to do? You need to explain if it's a part of a bigger change. You need to tell them that what you're doing is helping this and that, and the organization is benefiting overall by every pieces by collaborating with all those changes together within the organization. That's where the benefits. So they need to understand what is the benefits within their level and for the whole organizations to understand the importance of that change. Realistic time frame is basically having time available for people to learn. if you want to learn a new software or a new method or whatever is that, a new habit, it takes time, right? So you need to have an appropriate time and enough time for people to learn, your employee to practice and have problems and encounter those problems and solve those problems, enough for them to be proficient in the new processes or the change. Change agents effectiveness, this term, if you never heard of it, this is a good time to hear about it. Change agents, or what they call sometimes transition team, and also they call them change champions. Basically, they are a team that gets selected by leadership. They are within the doer level. They are not from the senior leadership. They are within your colleagues and everyone, and they are impacted by this change, and they're enthusiastic about it. So they are actually will guide and push through this change and support everyone else, and they will have some responsibilities to it. They call them change agents or change champions. And the sixth one is measure benchmarks. I think in our industry, we do this we understand this very, very easily, right? Like when you have a project, you have milestones. This is like a checkpoints to understand where you're going, where's the problem, what to need. The same thing with change. You need to establish a clear benchmark within the change to understand where we at, where's the problem, what we could do, and also to celebrate the wins, to achieve and recognize where we're at in those stages, exactly like what we're doing in construction projects. Again, to remind you with the goal, now we already identified a set of OCM practices. We found those 6 to be very impactful. They are the most prominent practices that successful organization in change, they are using it. But the question here is, are those 6 practices applicable and doing the great job that they are doing in any type of change? Are we talking technology? Are we talking change management, management practices, approach, business? Is it applicable for contractors and engineers, owners? That's the question. So what we did, once we identified all those practices, basically we tested and analyzed 633 changes happened in our industry. And what I mean by 633, each single point, like from those 600, there are one organizational change case that happened in an organization within our industry. And we have a broad perspective to cover the whole industry. We reach out to organizations from different professional groups. We are talking about contractors, engineers, architects, owners, public, private. We try to cover everyone so we have a bigger understanding and provide you with one solution at the end, which is the set of practice, and make sure that they are applicable to all type of needs that you have within any change. Just to give you like a overlook where we got the data from. So change types, like what are the type of change that have been being adopted in the change and or we've been captured in our data is we categorize them in 3 areas. We have technology, basically hardware technology, software technology, management. We are talking about management approaches, like if you're doing alternative project delivery methods, you're doing design bid build, moving from design bid build to design build, IPD, P3, managing the project itself. And businesses, we are talking about business structure, entering new market, hierarchy, acquisition, something like that. Within the organization type, we try to cover or collect data that represent the whole industry. So we have owners, we have contractors, we have architecture and engineers, we have other type of organizations like facility management, FMs, and more. So basically what we found in short terms, in let's say in simple words here, is all of them are important. It's obvious, like we confirmed those, but when we run them by those 633 cases and we checked with those organizations, all of them are important to first avoid failure, because this is the worst case scenario. You don't want to put your money on a change and at the end it's like poof, it's gone, right? Nobody's using it, no benefits, it's money down the drain. The other thing is they are very important and like are of the most important practices to achieve success. As I told you, like you need to have successful adoption so you get all the benefits of that change. If you're looking for 10 outcomes of that change, you need to achieve all of them. Any shortcoming of those outcomes means like you lost some of your money or your effort because you didn't reach all the goals you were looking for. Now, just for an extra detail here, we looked more to see, are some of them more impactful in a way of those six? We found those two to be the most impactful in addition to those five. We are not saying just focus on those two practices. All of them are important, but if you want to do more job and achieve the best type of change adoption, grasp all the benefits, you need to put more emphasis and do an excellent job by selecting and having more effective change agents and providing a more realistic time frame. Now, if you look at those, we said like those practices need to be learnable skills, available, you can do them, you could learn from them, you could enhance on them, right? But the problem, if you look at them, not all of them could be done. There's actually one that it's not always, if I want to say, a commodity, which is a realistic time frame. Sometimes that's everybody encountered that in COVID or in the pandemic. You have organization had specific time, very short time to switch their operations virtual or wherever is that type to accommodate for that type of enforcing change, right? So it's not always available to have the realistic time frame. Sometimes you have deadlines with software that is expiring, so you're moving to another software. You have deadlines to maybe execute a project using P3. There's a specific deadline, so you cannot stretch it as it's needed to have more better adoption of that change. We test that, we look at it, we found it's very risky. And once you're accelerating the change and put it on kind of an unrealistic time frame, the numbers doesn't get good, or it doesn't show any, it's not optimistic in a way. The successful cases of change adoption is dropping down, but even though the successful organizations and cases of change that they were able to navigate through restricted or constrained time frame, they were focusing on all the other five remaining practices, but they're putting more effort because they understand you're in a rush. The time is not, it's against you basically. And then we did the same thing. We looked more deep to see where are the actual most impactful of those remaining five. We found those three practices to be very important, and look at them. Basically, everything is within those six practices. They are important. You need to focus more on them. If one is disappearing, basically, or it's not available for some reason, you need to focus on the other ones in order to survive. And the best thing is the first step is to avoid failure, because we already shared the numbers. It's really high in terms of failure rates, and achieve all the benefits you're looking for within that change. Now you could read more about those practices. There's a KU article in the KU News. You could scan this code just to access it. And there's a published paper that goes in details and a very high details of the analysis. What are the organizations we gathered information from and cases, and even we compared with general contractors and subcontractors, architecture engineers, and so on, public, private, just to see if there's any differences that we could give more specific type of recommendation. But we found there's no differences. If you go with those six practices, you cannot go wrong, basically. Now, let me give you, I think we have some time here. So in terms of real case that we encounter, we've been helping organization with the Simpler Foundation. We're helping organization in our industry to adapt a lot of type of changes, and even out of our industry also. We help them adapt to new technologies, how to manage that change using those recommendations, those practices that I already mentioned earlier. And one case that I want to bring on, because it's a recent one, happened last year. We were helping a group of organizations, owner and three contractors, to adopt or implement a project using IPD, Integrated Project Delivery Method. For the one who does not remember what is IPD or not familiar with IPD, IPD basically is owner, contractor, and everyone sign one contract. They share the risk pools and everything basically, and they start from the beginning of the project all together, and they finish at the end, and they are signing one contract. I'm not promoting for IPD here. It's really good, but Again, it's a change, right? It's a management type of change. They always use design bid build. They want to do IPD. Within this project was an air separation unit plant for air products. If you know air products, basically this plant takes air and extract chemical components out of it, and they sell those chemicals to the industry, to the market. And they've been doing a lot of kind of similar plants, but they always disown our air products. They only do design bid build. This is the only method they use, design bid build, and they want to try IPD. All of those parties, the three parties and the owner, they never tried IPD before. So we help them using those practices and other type of support and documentation to measure the impacts and the benefits and make sure they are getting what they are looking for. But in terms of this presentation, in terms of the practices that they use, we lead them and we advise them and we guide them to use all those practices, those 6 practices. But I want to mention 2 of them just to show you how those type of practices are actually implemented on real world cases. The good thing that there's an understanding, and also this is a good quote I would like to share from the people from that project, is they understood the leadership. They had this vision. They understand IPD will help them a lot, and there's a lot of benefits to it, a lot of great things that you hear about IPD, but they understood that this vision will never happen unless the people on ground, the boots on ground, the doers, everyone within that organization, within this project, start acting using this vision, the IPD vision, nothing will happen. So they understand that this change needs to be done on all levels within this project. And we help them through that. So again, I just talk about 2 of the practices that we used and how they did it. The first one is, let me skip this one. First one is change agents. And we already explained this a little bit, which is the internal champions of change. And basically those are a team that you select to guide and support the transition or the change. They should be not the senior executives. They are with the doer level. They are like project managers, site leaders, supervisors, superintendents, and so on. They are the people are impacted by the change and they are involved of that change. There's a criteria where we help the leadership to select who are those people, who are those team members, the change agents. You need to select them because they are enthusiastic about change. They understand it. They could influence. They're in a role that they could influence people around them to start changing their mentality or using this new process. They have a lot of responsibilities. I'm not going to go in details here, but I could talk more about this case and more details once we reach to the questions. But they had a lot of extra duties to do while they're on the project. They're already on the project. They're already on the team. They're not an outsider. They are internal team. And those people, the change agents, they did a lot of a great job. We witnessed the cultural shift just because of those team, which again shows in a practical and a case study why it's important. Another practice that they used, and I like to mention here, is senior leadership involvement. So basically, as I told you, it's not micromanagement. We asked them to be involved in a monthly basis and in a different levels. They need involvement in different levels. So they were involved with, they come on site on monthly basis, meet with the project managers and the change agents, talk to them. Again, they're not trying to solve problems. They are here to support the idea, support the change. If there's problems, they will ask the team members to solve their problems. If they're here to check up on the change. That's how they are showing interest of the change rather than just coming to fix problems. Because that's why you see bosses on the construction site is just to fix a couple of problems. Then it tackled down to each level. Project leaders need to meet with the change agents and talk to them. It's kind of a senior leadership involvement in multi-level. Talk to them, make sure that this change is going and moving forward and they're moving with that direction. Where's the concerns and everything else? And the same thing with change agents, they are meeting specifically just for the change. So everyone in the organization, everyone in the hierarchy, they are seeing their supervisor or their leader are they are involved and they are very focused on that change and the process. They want to make sure it's happening plus the other jobs that they have or the other tasks they have. Basically, it's an open communication, a way to communicate and see what is the problem and actually speak out what are the barriers. So basically, that's all. I'm not going to talk about all the other practices within this project or this example, but those are the project was very successful. I skipped this slide, but it's a full of numbers that we confirmed. It was a very great project. Everybody was happy, and everything happened with the pandemic. Even with the pandemic and the restriction, they did a very good job compared to previous project out of the pandemic and even with project within the pandemic. But because they understood at the end, everyone understood that it's a really happened because it was a successful implementation and there was a cultural change within the organization. So they were able to change everyone within that organization, within that project. Again, if you're more excited about this project, you could read more in details and see those numbers and see how they approach this type of a new change. Not specifically for IPD, it's called Project Summit. They called it different name. You could scan this QR code. The report is there, talks about how they managed it, and they did a great job in managing the change and implementing this type of IPD. This slide is here for you if you want to take a screenshot, picture using your phone. Those are the practices. I'm not telling you to remember them, but those are the 6 that we think could make any change easier in a way, or let's say avoid failure and actually achieve all the outcomes. And this is based on 633 cases happened in the industry and with different organizations similar to your organization that they went different or numerous type of changes. And remember, once an organization is more capable of change, that will help them to have more competitive edge and be more up to date with the market, and also survive any unforeseen circumstances like what happened with the COVID. And I remember, like, just on that thing, I remember reading a research, the case studies that they collected with the COVID and the pandemic, and organization that they are used to change and adopting new changes, technologies, and so on, and they're like kind of pioneers in those type of changes. They were more able and successful to survive COVID and the switch because they just have those type of skills to change. And I think, yeah, that's the end of it. You could, if you have more questions, if you want to talk more about this, I have the KU email here. I have my simpler email. Here's my LinkedIn account and the simpler.com. You could read more about those practices, understand more if you want to have more details and maybe case studies or projects that we helped with or the Simpler Foundation helped with. And I think that's it. I'll open it for questions, and thank you for hanging around.
Thank you so much, Omar. This is such a great and useful information. And do we have any questions so far? We do have one question. So is there a checklist that can be used to guide project management?
Well, that's actually a great question. That's what we are, like the Simpler Foundation is trying, and in my research, this is kind of the end goal, right? To have a checklist to do how to manage, but remember the checklist need to be, when you think about it, it's more customized to a specific change. So it's like if you have a general checklist, it's kind of gonna be helpful in a way, but to be more practical, you need a checklist for each specific change. But the checklist that we could provide is, did you do all those 6 practices? This is the basic checklist. If you are doing all of them and focusing, not forgetting any of those practices, trying to do a great job, read more about change agents, for example, how to have more the senior leadership involved, how to involve in the right way. I think that's the checklist, but still we don't have like let's say a cookbook for it, and we wish we could do that. We're gonna do that eventually, but we're trying to cover the broader type of change, so we are not specific to any type of change here. That's a great question, actually. That's the intended goal at the end, is to like have a checklist what to do. But the easy answer here, or the quick answer, is those 6 practices. Consider them as a checklist. You need to do them all, and you'll have an outstanding outcomes.
Thank you, Omar. We have a next question. So if there is a high chance of failure, what is the first step you recommend after getting a failure? Should we follow the same approach with some changes?
Yeah, so if, let's say, if I understand the question right, if you're, let's say you're using those practices, but you failed at that change, right? Yes, like the most important thing is lessons learned. Try to analyze what happened here. What are those, why the failure? Maybe it's not related to any of those practices. Maybe you didn't do a good job in one of those practices, or you missed a couple of them. But yeah, you should, once you move to another change, if it's kind of similar, try to focus on the shortcomings and the lessons learned from that change, and try to learn more about those practices. Get help, for example, from other organizations, or try to focus more on those tips. Whatever, like lessons learned is the best thing once you have failed and move on. Use those practices, but try to put more emphasis and do them in a better way, where it's applicable, of course. I hope that answered the question. This is a good question. Welcome.
Got it. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Kirsch. Do we have any more questions? Oh, yes, we do. So how do you adjust your agency's mindset to being okay with failure and learning from those lessons, especially when budgets are small and your agency doesn't want the bad media coverage of a failure?
So let's, I catch this is a good question. I catch the short budget. Within those practices, if you could like notice, none of them requires money, right? It's mainly people. And the only thing that requires actually money is training resources. And normally it comes with that change if we're talking about softwares, but you could do that in-house or bring some specialties. That's like the cost of a change. But all the other practices we had and the management strategies, they are management. They does not cost you any type of money. It's just people's time for the end goal. Now, the first part, I think, of the question, what was it? Could you help me with the question again?
Yes. So how do you adjust your agency's mindset to being okay with the failures and learnings from those lessons?
Yep. Also communication. Communication. I'm sure everyone heard that before. Communication is the key. Lessons learned is the key. And when you do lessons learned, everyone needs to communicate. And we are not pointing finger here. We're trying to learn from our mistakes, why that thing failed. And we're not going to point finger here. We want to do it next time better. This is the only reason for, let's say, a lessons learned meeting, right? And trying to learn all the things that comes with a change, like those practices, and see what happened, what went wrong, and try to do it in a better way. And how to change people this is a cultural change. When you want to make your employee ready for failure and not be like frustrated with failure, is senior leadership, a role model. That's why we have like 2 kind of role models within our practices. You have the senior leadership is committed. Once the senior leadership committed to learn from their mistakes and showing that they want to just learn from their mistakes and do it better the next time, that's going to change kind of the culture and the perception of the employees. And then the change agents are there also to help that it's okay if you fail, let's know why, and let's do it better next time.
That's absolutely right. And yes, yep. Michelle, learning is a part of the process.
Yep, you are right.
Definitely.
Yep. That's why we were saying those practices. We were looking for practices that could be learned and used. Because the first time you're going to do change agents, not going to be the best time. You're going to select people. You're trying to like educate them how to run the projects, not support the change. Next time they will be, if they're with the same team, and they will be better. And even you as a leadership, you'll be better in selecting those people. And the same thing, like you could notice your senior leader involvement was kind of a micromanagement rather than involvement and pushing, not pushing, like being enthusiast about the change. And you will learn, you said you'll learn from that, and hopefully you'll do it better next time. Practice make perfect. That's what we're saying. You're not gonna nail it from the first time, but you could practice those. It could work for the first time in a good way, but you could like enhance on those. It's all of them are learnable skills within the management and the organizations. And once the organization are using those practice more and more, it's going to be one of it's going to be in the culture.
Got it. That's awesome. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, feel free, like anyone is on me, like you could feel free to email me. I'm always available if you want to talk more. You could read the resources I shared with you just to know more if you're curious. But again, like changes are going to happen, right? One way or another. There's a lot of changes that will happen, and that's the series what was exposing, right? And the previous webinars, a lot of new changes, a lot of new innovations. And I think I want to quote one thing from the project that I was talking about early on is why they did IPD. They see a lot of benefits to it, but the idea with the leadership that they said that we know or they believe, let's say, they believe that IPD will be the norm in projects. So they said, let's practice now. Let's try it out now. If we failed, we tried at least. We are learning from our mistakes. If we did a good job, we are ready. We are ready for the future. So basically, that's what you're doing. Once you're making your organization and you're more educated about how to manage change, you're ready for the future, because the future is full of changes, full of new innovations. And once you're forced on a change, you don't want to be that's your first try of changing your organization, because it's like it's going to be fatal for your organization, for example.
And we have one more question from Lisa. So what are some methods for assessing a new program, like internal and external, and how frequently?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. There's a lot of, I'm not going to say a lot, there's a couple of assessments or methods to what they call it change readiness for any organizations. And it's kind of within organizational change management, but it's kind of an early topic before you select the program, before you select the people. But basically, what we found, we have a good sample here of 633 cases, broad type of changes, and we didn't find that type of differences based on organization. We tried to look at that. And so what I'm trying to kind of have a short answer to the question is, I think, and we believe that those practices are good enough for any type of change, any program, any new change you're trying to do, whether if it's like, do you think your organization is ready or not, right? It's the readiness is mainly a cultural readiness. Are your team ready to change? Are they more type of a resistant team for some reason? But with those practices and management of how you could change the culture, change the employees, overcome some of those resistance, we believe those practices would also be applicable to everything. I hope that answered kind of the question, but it's kind of, there's a different topic how to assess any program. If you're talking about program as a new change or an organization, there's different topics before the actual management of a change. But again, we were saying, like, if you have any change you think it fits your organization, whether your organization they're against any change, we believe if you use those practices, it's going to be totally different than whatever you experienced before. Thank you for the question.
Cool. Do we have any more questions? I did post Dr. Mali's email address in the chat box. Mm-hmm. Feel free to email him with any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if no questions, again, thank you so much, Dr. Mali. This is a great information and great insights and amazing projects to know for all of us. And we hope to see and learn more innovations and projects like this We appreciate your time, and a very big thank you to all the attendees. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. And if you have any questions later, again, please feel free to email me or Dr. Mali. And yeah, and we did record this webinar, will be posted on our YouTube channel, and it is always accessible. So
yeah, thank you all. Thanks for this opportunity. I hope like I explored or presented a new topic or a new way to think of change. It's really important. It's really crucial also. It's kind of similar important to the change itself. Like you always look for the change, if it's good type of, let's say, the change, transformation, or technology. But again, you managing this change is kind of equally important.
sure, yes, definitely. So thank you again. If no questions, we will be signing off right now.
All right.
Awesome.
Well,
thank you, everyone. Yep.
Thank you,
Have
everyone.
a great Tuesday. Yep. Bye-bye.